So the four knights and the Scotch four knights. The Scotch four knights happens in this position after d4, and the other main line is the proper four knights game is to play bishop to b5. And there's one or two other things we'll look at. So Scotch four knights, e takes d4, knight takes d4, and now the very well known line is bishop to b4. And after takes, bishop to d3, and takes, castles, bishop g5, c6, and now I think queen f3, bishop e7 is safe and about equal. I think Kramnik or someone was trying to play an early h3 in these lines, and I think Krzysztof Silecki has made it the basis of his book about keep it safe and simple, but I mean it's not been that popular. I think it's still equal. Bishop g5, c6, knight a4, trying to make a point of saying this c6 pawn is weak. We'll hit the bishop with h6, rook e8, bishop to d6, and after takes, we've got an isolated but passed d pawn, knight to c3, and bishop to e5. And I think this position is fine for black. You can get a similar positions to this out of the Sicilian defence. In fact, have a look at one of the Fischer-Spassky games. So that's the big main line with bishop to b4. If you don't fancy quite so much aggro there, I think John Ems has recommended this, bishop to c5. Not bad, a little bit unusual. Why not have a go? It fits in with the other system that we know. Bishop to e3 threatens knight takes c6 again, winning a piece. So bishop to b6 this time, and if takes e5, takes on e3, knight to d5, takes, and now queen h4 check, rook to b8, and castles, followed by b3, is reckoned to be about a slight advantage by the Encyclopedia of Chess Openings, but I quite like bishop to b7 in this position, and I mean obviously white can't take the d pawn because of the pin, and I think black could look forward to this with every hope of at least equality. So that's the bishop e3 line after bishop c5. If instead knight takes c6 and bishop to d3, this is maybe a lot more sensible for white, and knight a4, well, they're going to get the bishop pair now, and our pawns aren't so happy, so maybe white has a small plus here, but it's a lot less well known, this line, and I think quite playable. Just going back a line or two, after d4, e takes d4, there is a line which is called the Belgrade Gambit, knight to d5, and the simplest way to equalise, which I may also owe to John Ems, but I can't remember when I wrote these notes, knight to b4, and takes on d5, can take on, there's no way you might take, but takes on d5 is about equal, and the idea bishop to c4, it's after knight to b4, bishop to c4, and again knight on b to d, takes d5, and this position's perfectly okay for black. So that's the Belgrade Gambit. So again knight f6, and oh, there's just before we get stuck into the two knights proper, there's this thing called the Halloween Gambit. Knight takes e5, d4, and the knights have to retreat either to knight g6 and you get hit with e5, or knight to c6 and you get hit by d5. And white's initiative is surprisingly hard to sit on, given that they've given up a piece for what seems like not much. But I think just return the piece at some point and don't retreat, and you should be fine. So after knight g6, e5, knight g8, no better square, bishop to c4, and now queen f3 is in the post. Bishop b4 I've seen played here, but d5 takes on d5, c6, bishop b3, bishop e6 is a line, and I think black should be okay here. We're still a piece up for the moment, so no need to panic. Or knight to c6, d5, and hoping for knight e5 and f4 when you're getting well, probably quite squashed. Knight c6, d5, bishop b4 is a lot more sensible. Takes on d6, c6, knight takes e4, queen d4, queen e7 is much more sensible for black. Just to keep things going, white might play queen takes g7, but takes, and now bishop to e3, knight d5 check, and c3, rook f8 finally, takes on b4, takes on e3, takes on e3, takes on b4 check, and Jan Pinsky reckons that black is close to winning in this position, which I wouldn't doubt. But black seems a lot closer to getting Derlets from getting their pieces organised, and can look forward to that with some confidence. So that's the Halloween gambit. If instead of knight takes e5 we look at bishop to b5, this is really the main line of the four knights variation, and I mean there was some fashion for this about 40 years ago, but I think grandmasters more or less given up on this as a way to get an advantage. That doesn't mean you can stop thinking though. I've always recommended knight to d4 as a way of having a go at this. I mean bishop c5 is another way of avoiding the main lines you can look at, but knight to d4, Rubinstein's variation, or Rubinstein's gambit. And now there's a fair amount of choice for white, but I don't think any of it's too worrisome for black. Knight takes e5, queen e7 is the line, and if f4 takes and d6, and you're getting the pawn back, I would have thought quite happily here. If knight to d3, oops, bishop g4 is an idea. If knight f6, c6, hit the other knight, knight takes e4, and this is about equal, and as usual white might miss having the two bishops, so that's okay for black I think. If instead bishop to c4 on move 5, well, takes and d6 is a line, but let's develop with bishop to c5, knight takes e5, and now queen e7 again, although d5 might be worth a look, but queen e7, and the main line runs like this. I mean the principles I'm sure you can get even if you can't remember all the moves at this speed. Bishop to g4, takes, castles long, and I think black's development is worth a pawn here, maybe more than a one pawn if f7 is dropping. So yeah, I think this is all okay for black. Castles is another line. Takes on b5, knight c3, d6, d4, queen c7. Really not very exciting. This is a sort of formation you might play in the Philidor or some lines of the Ryan Lopez, but you've got two bishops, and I think those are definitely worth something. And if knight takes d4, e takes d4, well, we've tried to make this game interesting, but white won't let us. E5, takes, d takes c3, and now queen e4 check, and now the queens could come off with equality, but bishop to e2, castles and castles also equal, nothing much in there. Bishop to a4 is a line. The old move was bishop to c5, and I think white's black's okay in these lines. For example, takes on e5, bishop b6, e5, knight e8. And now the old main line was castles, and d6, takes on e6, knight to f6, exclamation mark. Is reckoned to be some sort of game for black where you can look forward to a good gambit play, I think. the alternate to this was after 98 knight d5. This was the big idea in the 1990s, and d6 c5 is the latest thinking for black. And again, between a couple of GMs in 2002, went c3, takes on d6, knight f6, and bishop to c7. And again, I think black is okay in this position. I mean, again, yes, you are a pawn down, but white's development is quite awkward. So I think nothing. You know, if you're playing a gambit, you should look forward to playing this sort of position. But that's the old main line with bishop to c5. Instead, you can play c6, which is a more recent try, and certainly worth a punt. If castles, queen a5 is a plan, making it life awkward for the bishop. d6, bishop e7, castles, queen e7. We've got the same structure as we had before, but we don't have the bishop pair. So that seems okay for white. Knight takes e5 instead after c6, knight takes e5. d5 is not often played, but looks worth a try. d6, knight f3, bishop g4, and d3, and now d5. And again, what black hopes the good development will make up for the missing pawn. And lastly, after c6, d3 is rather weedy for white. b5, take the bishop pair, and after castles we have bishop e7, bishop g4, and knight to h5. And this position, I think, is, I mean, black seems to have a tiny initiative. I don't know how it's going, but this must be fine for black. Going back after bishop to g4, rook e1 is a line, and again, sort of natural sorts of moves seem to lead to a fair initiative for black and a decent play. Or even further back after d6 instead of castles, knight e2, similar sort of play really. And again, I think this is okay for black. So that's a complete recipe, I hope, and some of the sorts of ideas for playing against the Scotch and for Knights games. All of the moves, if you want to rehearse them and try and learn them, are in the PGN file, but mainly it's have some sort of idea of where you're going before you play a game, and after a game look it up and make sure you do really know it for next time.